Hey everyone, thank you so much for having us to talk to you about the fight for prison phone justice. My name is Myaisha Hayes. I'm the National Field Organizer on Criminal Justice and Technology at Media Justice. And I'm joined by Ulandis Forte, who is a lead activist within the fight for prison phone justice. Ulandis is actually from DC, lifelong resident, and by the age of 20, Ulandis was incarcerated at Lorton Correctional Facility. And when Lorton Correctional Facility shut down, he was actually transferred to prisons all around the United States, including places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, places that were essentially 1,000 miles away from home. So phone calls were his lifeline to his friends, his family, his community, especially his beloved grandmother, Miss Martha Wright Reed. Miss Martha Wright Reed actually sued the prison phone industry 20 years ago for the excessive high rates for prison phone calls, and is the reason why we have a campaign for prison phone calls today. Ulandis has been an activist for prison phone justice the entire time, and since his release, he's actually created a nonprofit called Forte Inc., and is a husband and father that lives with his family in DC. Do you want to share a little bit about your organization?
Yes. Good morning. Hello. As you said, my name is Ulandis Forte. Me and my amazing wife, we started a corporation, a nonprofit organization called Forte Inc., focusing on reasons to educate. We're getting it off the ground. We just want to give back to the community, no matter what race, creed, color. We just want to be able to assist, whether it be a female need a dress for prom, family needs something to eat, any type of education that we can aid and assist, that's what we would like to do. So that's what our organization is based upon, just helping the community.
So I think it's helpful to actually start off talking a little bit about why this organization that I work for, called Media Justice, has been involved with the prison phone justice fight. Media Justice is an organization based out in Oakland, California. We've been around for 10 years, and our mission is to drive campaigns fighting for the digital rights and communication rights of communities of color. And the reason why we focus on this is because for communities of color, for low-income families, transforming systemic barriers in the 21st century really requires a fair economy, connected communities, and a political landscape that allows for voice and representation and power. And in a media and technology environment, it's incredibly important that our media and technology really fuels social justice. And that's especially true for communities that have been impacted by mass incarceration. So I'm sure folks are familiar in this room with the crisis that is mass incarceration. This is mass incarceration nation. In 2013, we learned that the United States had the highest rate of incarceration in the world. I'm sure people are familiar with the statistic that we are, fourth of the world's population, and yet we house 22% of the world's incarcerated population, which means that this has had a devastating impact on Black and brown people who have been disproportionately impacted by policing and funneled through the criminal justice system. This also means that this has had a huge impact on the families and communities that belong to those folks who are serving time. So it's really important to uplift the fact that there are 2.7 million children that are connected to someone inside a jail or a prison. And I think it's also important to uplift the fact that today, a typical phone call is cheaper now than ever. And yet, a phone call to a jail or a prison, depending on the state that you're in, can actually cost $15 for a 15-minute phone call. And thanks to a report by the Ella Baker Center called Who Pays, we know that 87% of those covering the cost of prison phone calls are women and children. They're grandmothers, they're mothers, they're sisters, they're people that have loved ones inside. And so to quickly break down essentially why the costs are so high, I mentioned before that, in today's society, a phone call is actually quite cheap, but to make a phone call to a jail or prison is really expensive. And the reason why is because Global Tel-Link and Securus are two billion-dollar prison phone communications industries that actually own 80% of the market, which means that it leaves very little choice for families as to which companies they can give their money to basically be in touch with their loved ones inside. Another reason why phone calls are extremely expensive is because of the unnecessary fees that are basically attached to the call. So for instance, if I have an account with Global Tel-Link, I actually have to pay a fee to deposit money into that account to call my loved one. There are connection fees that are also added onto the high rate of the prison phone call. And another reason why phone calls are extremely expensive is because prisons and jails actually choose their contracts based on the commission that they're promised by these companies. So they're not contracting with Global Tel-Link and Securus because they have affordable rates. They're contracting with Global Tel-Link and Securus because they're guaranteed a high commission that's based off of the revenue that these companies are making from the payment that families are making in the fees and the rates itself. So this is a huge reason why Ulandis' grandmother 20 years ago sued the prison phone industry, and years to come would spark the campaign for prison phone justice. So I'm gonna actually start our dialogue and ask Ulandis to take us back to when you first heard that your grandmother was suing the prison phone industry. Know that must have been big news to hear, and I'm just hoping that you can share with us what was going through your mind, what was going on in your family, and just kind of take us back to that moment.
When I first got the news, I was elated. I was excited, but I didn't understand the magnitude of the fight we were facing. It was like a big monster once we got into it. These big corporations making so much money, had these big lawyers, and it was just little old me and my grandmother, who was my giant, who was my force, my strength. And when she said that this is what we're going to do, and we're going to step in the ring with these people, I was all for it because I always believe in what she say, because anything that she told me always came to pass.
So earlier we mentioned that after Lorton Correctional Facility had shut down, you were transferred to facilities all across the United States. You were incarcerated at places in Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, just to name a few, which meant that you're from DC, you're thousands of miles away from home. Can you actually really break it down for us how difficult it would have been for your grandmother to come visit you?
So my grandmother, God rest her soul, she died 2015, January 18th, on my birthday. It was so difficult for her to travel to where I was. I've been to Kentucky, I've been to Arizona, which is like 4,000 miles away from DC. And so all we had was communication. But the problem with our communication was the decisions she had to make. It was some months where she had to go without some of her medication because she couldn't afford that and to communicate with me. So it was very important for us to have the lines of communication, but in the same token, one of the major things was, I remember one time I was in Kentucky and I refused to send her a visitation form. That's the only way they could come see us. And it's because I knew that we couldn't afford it. Every penny counted, every dollar made sense for us, that we had to take our time and just spend it wisely, because she still had assistants, nursing assistants. And it came a time, and I want to say this now, it came a time where we didn't know how much the prison phone calls were costing because she was blind. So all she knows was that her bank accounts were depleting pretty fast, and she didn't know why, because she couldn't see. And the nurse aide, finally explained to her that, hey, you're getting two phone bills. She get a regular phone bill, and then you will receive one specifically for these phone calls. Some phone calls were actually $30 for 15 minutes. We've gotten a $60 phone. It's like Russian roulette. You don't know how much you're going to pay, and but you're forced to. And sometimes we would talk twice a week. I mean, and it was just heartbreaking. I feel bad, very bad.
But can you also like kind of explain, let's say your grandmother wanted to come visit you in Ohio, right? I know you've told me before that basically, like, because she needed assistance, it wasn't just her that she had to cover the cost of, right?
Right. She will always have to pay whoever come with her, her nurse aide. She would have to pay them their full round trip in order to come visit me. So that was one of the reasons why I was trying to convince her not to, or just had to take it upon myself not to send the form, because it came a few times where she forced me to, like, hey, I'm coming to see you. It's been a while. And she didn't care about the cost because she knew how important it was for our communication to stay strong.
Thank you. I think it's really important to like emphasize that, right? Like, there's a cost associated with traveling to go see your loved one. And typically folks with incarcerated loved ones are incarcerated at places that are on average 300 miles away from their home. And in the situation with Ulandis, it was even more than that, yes. Right? Yes. We're talking about thousands of miles away from home. And so for your grandmother, it sounds like she would have to pay for her travel and her aide's travel, and that's an incredible amount of money to spend just to be in touch with your loved one. And I think it speaks to the really messed up isolation that people experience when they're incarcerated. Can you talk to us about how your grandmother, how your phone calls with your grandmother actually really helped you survive for the 20 years that you did inside?
It was very important that I had the lines of communication with my grandmother. I've been around guys who all they had was each other. So, when they have that saying, I'm my brother's keeper, it was true, because after a while, you would have assistance from family and friends and loved ones, but then the realization after a few years that, hey, they have bills too, they have a life, and life goes on, and they can't afford to do the same things that they were doing in the beginning. So, it just becomes strenuous. And for me, being able to talk to my grandmother once, sometimes when we're lucky on good months, twice a week, once a week, because we always talked on Sundays. And when we talk on Sundays, we just wrap up what happened during the week. She'd tell me that that she put my name in prayer at church Sunday. It means a lot. It really kept me connected. It's like I grew up with my family, so I wasn't out of touch with what was going on. I see people who come home and they don't have an inclination of what's going on because they didn't have that connection. That communication between you and whoever's on the outside is so important, but people make it so hard because they're so greedy. So they make it difficult for us. Okay, yes, I did whatever I did to be in prison. I'm okay with that. I spend my time, but please do not kick me while I'm down because of me and my family trying to communicate. It's so important for us to have that, because when you get out here, and I can tell you, man, I'm very successful. God has been so good to me. A wonderful family. I have a child. I'm an account manager, supervisor where I work at, and it's all God, but also because I was able to communicate. I've seen guys go crazy, lose their mind because they didn't have what I had. Like, really.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, y'all.
It's all good. When we were talking before, you mentioned a point about how letters and mails weren't really enough. Can you touch on that?
Yes, I've seen guys, wait for letters, wait for mail. I'm gonna tell you, it's gotten so bad in prison to where as though it used to be a time where, people will write you letters, people will send you stamps, care packages, things of that nature to help you along your time of incarceration. But what they've done now is they're starting to monopolize everything, and they see that how much money can be made, so they've stopped the outside world from being able to assist you with the care packages. You can't send me stamps anymore. Only thing you can send me is a money order to purchase whatever I want from them. You know, and you know, it's bad, and there's nothing that we can do about it because it's been going on for so long. Even now, they have a thing where we can email, but you know, everything has a price now. But anybody on the outside world, the only thing they can send you at this point is a money order, and to purchase whatever from the prisons.
And just for folks, FYI, you know, prisons are very restrictive as to what you can mail to your loved ones inside. So I just wanted to uplift that point because I think it's really important to further emphasize again why phone calls really matter to families when they are, you know, trying to be in touch with their loved ones. That, you know, going these long distances to visit them is costly and it's really challenging. And then on top of that, you know, you can't just mail whatever you want, right? That in fact, those packages are screened, and there's a whole list of things that folks cannot have inside. So really, phone calls are incredibly important for folks to maintain a sense of connection with their loved ones. You talked a lot about what it was like for you to come home a little bit, and how for those years that you were inside, staying in touch with your grandmother actually helped you when you came back home. And I think that's a really important point. Can you talk a little bit more about how that communication, you know, it sustained you while you were inside, but then it actually helped you when you came out?
Yes, as I was saying before, that it kept me grounded, being able to grow with my family. It wasn't like, hey, come on, we've been gone all these years, let's catch up. It's like I grew up with the family, so I was in tune, in touch, and that growth really helped me. I've seen guys come in, you can tell. When you see me that, I mean, I pride myself in not looking like I've done 18 years straight. And it's because of me growing up with my family, only because of the communication. Again, I always stress how important it is because I've seen guys literally lose. We have guys who know me and know my grandmother. My grandmother has adopted some of these guys who don't have a family. So, you know, when I see them here after years in the real world, they're like, hey, how's your, they don't know she's passed, but they be like, hey, how's your grandmother? Remember your grandmother, man, because, you know, she was such a strong force and a strong presence in my life that I used to always let everybody else know. They can see me glowing, and I used to share, you know, my conversations and the things that me and my grandmother talk about, and it was like they're living their life through me. It was very important, very important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know that right now we're in a moment where issues related to prisons and jails are a real hot topic issue right now, and everyone's talking about, you know, how do we get ourselves out of this mess of mass incarceration? How do we, you know, actually decarcerate and release more and more people from jails and prisons? And I think this point about the fact that not being isolated is one huge step to ensuring that people succeed when they actually come home. So thanks to like your grandmother's activism, your activism, this issue of prison phone justice is now a hot topic as well, right? Like people are more and more informed of the prison profiteering companies that are making money off of people's misfortune and their circumstances. And now we know so much information about how these companies operate, how they tack on these fees, how they you know, take advantage of families that want to be in touch with their loved ones. Can you talk to us about how learning about all that information and how these companies operate actually informed your own politics about the communication rights of incarcerated people?
Yes, glad you asked that. One of the main things I want everybody to understand is that although we're in the situation that we're in, being incarcerated for whatever you did, that we're still human. It's like we're written off once you go away, and whatever happens, happens, hey, it is what it is. When in all actuality, my grandmother, one of my sisters, they didn't do anything to negate the fact that they are, they don't allow them to talk to me, and it's like we're being taken advantage of to the point to where as though it's like that they're being punished as well as I am. So it's almost feel like double jeopardy. I'm not able to talk to my grandmother. I'm not able to talk to my loved ones because of the simple fact of where I am or what I did, and somebody's taking full advantage of this with these, overpricing their phone calls. It's been bad. I've seen families broken up because of this. So let me tell you, one of the most important things I've seen, and I'm not a psychologist, but this is one thing I do know. If anybody have seen or been around anybody who's been incarcerated, one thing that I can stand on is this: for the most part, we come out, we look good, sometimes we work out, we're strong, but like, hey, this guy looks good, shining. But the psyche, what happens is the day that you're incarcerated, for whatever reason, you grow and hair grows, strength, all these things happen. But I've seen people do 20 years, come home, and they're 40, 50 years old and doing the same exact thing. It's just like their life was put on pause or on halt. But these are the guys who didn't have that communication. You have that communication, you can grow. I see these guys come home now, 50 years old, hey, hip hop, and well, hey, you got to slow down. But I understand why, though. They just missing a lot of the communication in order to grow. And I've seen guys who was beneficial, was in a good position like I was, and was able to talk and communicate with their families, that they were able to touch loved ones, able to touch friends, to grow with their children. So it's very important because the children shouldn't suffer. And I've seen people still be able to raise, their children and grandchildren just through communication. So, it's very important. It can help decarceration. It helped me very much coming out here to be successful. So it works. Nobody can tell me anything different. I know.
So, like we mentioned before, 20 years ago, Ulandis' grandmother had sued the prison phone industry, and for the next 20 years, she continued to fight to reduce the cost of phone calls. And then about 2012, I want to say, several organizations, criminal justice organizations, media justice organizations came together to fight alongside of her and really target the Federal Communications Commission to step in, right, and to regulate this market, to regulate these prison phone companies, because clearly they were taking such egregious advantage of families and their need to communicate with their loved ones. So in 2013 and 2016, we were successful in that. We got the Federal Communications Commission to issue several orders to regulate the cost of phone calls, including capping the rates for out-of-state prison and jail phone calls to 21 cents per minute, as well as capping the cost of fees. So the fees that I mentioned before for depositing your money into your account, or that connection fee, also got capped and taken off of the plate of families who were paying these ridiculous costs to stay in touch with their loved ones. But if anyone in this room is an organizer, you know that once you start winning, right, you can anticipate a backlash coming right soon after. And these companies have a lot at stake. These companies make billions of dollars a year off of the backs of families with incarcerated loved ones. And so they came back and sued to block the court ruling so that the cost of local and state prison calls are still really high. They basically tried to say that the Federal Communications Commission didn't have jurisdiction over state and local calls. Now, the good news is that states can take the initiative themselves to reduce the cost of phone calls. In New York City, calling Rikers is free. Several states have also passed, like in Chicago or in Illinois, have passed legislation to cap the rate of phone calls. But without the FCC to step in, there are other states who, are not paying attention to this issue, who are happy to let the prison phone industry take advantage of families, have not done anything to regulate the cost of these phone calls. And so we've continued to fight the industry, and we've continued to fight with the FCC to step in and regulate these phone calls. And just this past June, we actually introduced legislation named after Ulandis' grandmother, the Martha Wright Reed Just and Fair Communications Act, that would address that argument that the prison phone industry made, and restore the FCC's authority to regulate local and state phone calls. So my last question to you is, this has been a 20-year fight. It's ridiculous, 20-year fight. We're still fighting. And I would like to know from you, in this next iteration of the campaign, what do you think is going to be really important to guarantee the success and to guarantee more wins in the future?
I truly believe that if we can get people to understand how important it is communication is the key. No matter relationship, friendship, we know that the same way in the real world, the same way in the incarcerated world, that communication goes a long way. They understand, again, that these people that are incarcerated are human. The people that's trying to connect with us are human. That real people. It worked for me. I do understand that if you have that support, if you're able to communicate, if it's affordable, that it will be beneficial, not just for the people that's involved, but coming out here into the real world and able to be productive. It happens. We have a better chance if we be able to communicate, as opposed to these monsters that's profiting for this situation and killing the communication. And then you have these guys that come out here with no direction, with the mentality that they did when they went in. And that's what's reoccurring. If we able to open up some eyes, allow people to communicate, allow other people to help, allow their family members. My family members know me better than anybody in this room. Allow me to communicate with somebody who know me, who understand my fight, who understand what I'm going through. It'll help so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So just some quick plugs. If you want to get involved in this work, you can come see me. We actually have a survey that's live right now, just to continue collecting stories. A big success of this campaign when we were fighting with the FCC was to actually bring directly impacted people to the FCC to share their stories, to share the hurt and the pain that they were going through because of the decisions that they had to make around these phone calls. Like Ulandis was saying, his grandmother having to choose between a phone bill and her medication. These stories are incredibly powerful. They're the strength of our movements. And so if anyone in this room is impacted by prison phone justice, or is a part of an organization that is connected to people that are impacted, I'd love to share you our survey. And then we also have a list that you can join to hear more updates about our ongoing work. And I'm also gonna say, do you have a plug for your organization?
Yes, I'm getting me and my wife is getting our organization off the ground, which I said Forte Inc., focusing on reasons to educate. By all means, if anybody wanted to reach out to me, I have no problem giving my information, my number, email, if anybody have any ideas, because, we just have to get, everything together. And it's just a movement that I really want to help impact people before they have to get to a situation that I was in.
So we'll take questions and answers. Or questions, rather.
Thank you all for that. Okay, back here.
Hi, my name is Camille. Thank you so much, Ulandis and Myaisha, for sharing. I was a volunteer in San Quentin prison for many years, and I know the importance of keeping in touch. One of the things I'm curious about is, we talk about the telephone. Most of us don't have phone calls like that anymore. Is there an extended fight for access to internet, email, things like that?
There is, but I'm a little bit skeptical about it because with any company that's able to provide sort of communication to folks inside, there's usually a catch. So it's usually a costly service. And then there are concerns around, data and how these companies are tracking people's information and their conversation. And so there is a move to, like, as you said, for emailing and for videoing. But the other catch too is sometimes these places will say, well, now that we have video, we can take away in-person visitation. And that's cruel. It's straight up cruel. So there is, but I'm just very skeptical about it because this industry is greedy and they take advantage of people. And so with that, there's always some kind of catch. So yeah.
And one other thing, before I came home, they just started the email communication, but the only issue with it is it takes a couple days. You send me an email today about something that's very important or of urgency, and a few people have to read it, have to go through a certain protocol before you're able to read it a few days later, before you get it.
Is there another question?
Hello, Ulandis. I'm Ivy. So I was really touched by your talking about how hard it is for your grandmother to visit you. My tear come out while you talking about that. And you talk a lot about how you treasure the connection and the communication. So I wonder, would you or did your grandmother support prison abolishment, and why?
You said that we support
prison abolition.
So since I've been home since 2012. Anything that have to do with incarceration reform, prison reform, I've been all over. Anytime anybody have asked me to show up on the corner, in Boston, anywhere you need me to be, if my words can help, if me being involved can assist, I've been all over it. My grandmother being blind, my grandmother started going blind right when I first went to prison in 1994. She just started going blind. So she hasn't been able to do too much of anything without assistance, but I've been doing any and everything that I can since I've been home.
And I guess just to add to that, we talked a lot about the isolation that people experience when they're inside and how that actually doesn't help people rehabilitate or transform inside. And we're told this lie, I believe, that prisons and jails are meant to rehabilitate people. And we have evidence that undermines that, right? Like, we have so much evidence out there that jails and prisons are extremely violent, inhumane conditions, and then the isolation on top of that, right? How do you expect people to really rehabilitate and transform and grow when they're under such conditions? So I certainly identify as a prison abolitionist. I don't believe that jails and prisons actually keep us safe. And I think we need to move in a direction where we find alternatives, and the alternatives are thrown around a lot. So now I'm kind of actually saying I don't want alternatives, I just don't want jails and prisons, period.
Thank you.
You can take just one more. I see Corin in the front.
Hi, thanks to both of you for that really powerful and informative talk. I just wanted so you mentioned the FCC as the main kind of channel through which we could try and regulate this industry. I wondered if there's been any success in activism against the companies that are actually involved in providing the services, or if you have any thoughts on how they could be pressured to just provide them in a kind of more humane manner.
That's a good question. Truthfully, moving forward, because we have introduced legislation, our target is going to be pushing Congress to support our legislation. Because right now, the FCC has Ajit Pai, who is like not our champion on any of our issues. And he was actually like a big factor in how the prison phone industry was able to successfully sue the FCC for the court ruling that they made in 2013 and 2016. And he was previously like a lawyer for a lot of different phone companies, separate from Global Telink and Securus. So that was part of the reason why we pivoted into a strategy around introducing legislation, because we know that the FCC is going to continue to tell us, oh, we don't have the power, we don't have the jurisdiction to do so. As far as targeting Global Telink and Securus, I have personally, and you can feel differently, but I have no faith that these companies are going to do the right thing. So I know that there's some activism by other groups around divestment strategies to make their businesses quite volatile and not a business that other folks want to invest in. But that's a long-term, long-game strategy, and obviously all of this is going to be a long-term game. But our focus at Media Justice is to really support that legislation. Because otherwise, these companies are just going to do whatever they can to keep making money off of families and incarcerated people.
Thank you both. And I want to just reemphasize that there's a call to action and that these telecommunication issues are so deep and so layered, and I really appreciate you all for bringing the vulnerability. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.